Hey, if you want to have a workplace where people are fired up and excited and motivated, then we're here to forget about the corporate fluff and get educated, get entertained by Mr. Devin C. Hughes, who helps leaders and teams do more than just check the box on engagement. Devin shows them how to light it on fire in the good way, and he has a sixth sense for sniffing out stale workplaces, and he helps them turn into thriving, connected ecosystems where people actually want to show up. So we're here to talk about those things. Better workplace, better leadership, culture transformation, so much more. We're here with Devin C. Hughes, not your average leadership speaker. And Mr. Devin, glad to be speaking with you.
Wow, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, you'd hope so, right? If that's your brand, if you're all about excitement, then we'd hope that the excitement comes from within the house. And so as far as that excitement, what has you super jazzed up lately? What are you focused and passionate about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm passionate about, into total. I'll divvy it up in two spaces. Personally, life's pretty strong. I've got 4 daughters. I've been married almost 29 years. So I'm keeping my values in the main thing. So yeah, I feel blessed. Professionally, I'm working on a couple new projects, working on a couple new books for kids. I'm writing every week, write 3 to 4 articles a week, speaking all over the country. So my vocation is my vacation. I love the work that I do and the people that I get to do it, like the opportunity today.
Nice. Well, you're in a good spot. And it's easy to talk yourself out of doing all those important things, right? Life is short, and after we're gone, what will be left? What will be left are the content we create, those books you write, the videos, the lasting impressions of people with us. So it's easy to sit on the couch and eat some popcorn and watch TV and feel good, but that won't change the world. And then so you have to put on your pants and go to those events and go into those podcasts and get that writing and those articles done. And so would you say, is there a secret to what you figured out? Because sometimes people kind of like force their way to go to work or force to be productive, but it seems like you enjoy it. And I'm always looking to get some new secrets there, tap into the energy. So how do we enjoy what we do?
Well, I mean, that's been the kind of the bane of my existence, trying to figure it out. I mean, like a lot of people, when I graduated from undergrad, I had no idea or predicate what to do. I just thought you get a job, in some industry, which again, you don't have a lot of domain expertise unless you got an internship, and then you still don't have a whole lot of data. So I probably had 25, 30 jobs in the first, 10 years of my career, Robert, trying to figure it out. Is this what I want to do? Is this the industry? This is really what goes on? And I would just literally, I felt like Indiana Jones trying to find the lost city of great culture. And then, you start to find a niche, make a little money, you get promoted, you move up, you buy a house, you get a car, you do the traditional thing. And then for me, you get to an inflection point and you go, is this it? Is this it? Does it really matter? And so I'll fast forward here. I was in an organization at the tail end of when I was working in corporate world, I got laid off. And so I was at that point. If there was ever going to be a time when I was going to put my fingerprints on the planet, it'd probably be right now. Okay. And so do I want to look back? One of the heaviest things you can do is have regret. And so I continued to speak. We did a Rotary Club talk, again, which is really, really random. And a publisher came up to me at the end of the talk and said, "Hey, you're amazing in front of the room. Have you ever thought about writing a book?" That was in 2010. And that was kind of the inflection point when everything changed. I didn't think about writing a book. He said, "You're smart. You can figure it out. We got editors. We got da-da-da-da-da-da." And next thing you know, that was 20 books later.
Nice.
So, yeah. So the answer goes specifically, that was a long-winded way of saying I didn't have it all figured out. I didn't have a Venn diagram. I didn't have a Mr. Miyagi. I didn't have Obi-Wan Kenobi. You know what I did? I find that, the people who do fascinating things in the world, they just go do it and experiment and they iterate like what you're doing. And you end up in serendipitous conversations that you normally wouldn't end up. And someone says something and goes, "Wow, I know someone," or "I thought about that." I give it the equivalent of improving life. If you know improv is yes and.
Right.
Can you do it? Yeah. And that's kind of sort of how I've done with my career. It's just, yes, I'm smart. I'll figure it out. I'll fall down. I'll get up. And that's it.
Very nice. You figure it out, right? One foot in front of the other. Write a book, one word in front of the other. Are there a million things to figure it out? Yeah, but figure out what to solve and in what order. So you figured out just quite a few things, right? Of taking that imperfect action and saying yes to those opportunities and being fearless. But then there's a lot of just things going wrong in workplace culture, right? There's a lot of platitudes, a lot of posers, a lot of people just not going about it right. So is there a particular myth in workplace culture that just drives you crazy?
Yeah, I think too often well, first of all, I'm not sure that a lot of leaders know what actually culture is. We kind of use it, we kind of throw it around, and sometimes it becomes perks, parties, and food, right? And so it's a food truck, it's a T-shirt, it's a holiday, it's something like that. So it becomes more performative, and that's not what culture is. Culture results from the messages we receive about what is really valued around here and what is not. Culture is essentially how people want to be seen, heard, and valued. It's the unwritten rules. The platitudes in the handbook and all that stuff, that's great. You need that. Just like you need policemen to give out speeding tickets. That's not culture. Culture's how we show up, what we talk about, what we do. Can I be in a meeting room with a senior leader? Can I be contrarian? Can I think differently? Can I push back? Can I live on the bleeding edge? And these little norms that, again, we don't really necessarily talk about enough. And what I tell leaders is you have a culture, whether you realize it or not. You can just be very intentional on how you co-create it. And that's not from the top down, that's from the bottom up and the sideways. So when you look at the workplace right now, you got 4 to 5 generations in the workforce. You got the digital natives and you got, baby boomers and traditionalists. So you got folks who grew up with a typewriter, and you got folks who came out of the womb with an iPhone, all trying to coalesce and all acting, and so that's the challenge right now. But at our core, regardless of what year you were born, we all kind of sort of have the same human needs. We want to
Right.
be seen, heard, and valued. And if you keep the main things, and we figure out how to get some of the other stuff out of the way, people are like, yeah, this, and so it's interesting when you ask me that question. When I do this work, people go, well, you know what, Devin, it just feels different here. Feels like a Wi-Fi signal. You know when you're with your people or not, and you know when you're not. And so again, so how do you operationalize a feeling? Well, that's what I work on. I give people tools and resources on how to do it. Now people say, oh, well, that's too woo-woo. What's the ROI on that? And then I said to someone the other day, the ROI on culture. And I go, what's the ROI on your parents? Is everything a business metric? How about your grandma? What's the ROI on her? It's interesting when people want to push back on this. They bring out the business school speak. Some things are just so obvious and demonstrative. I don't need an MBA to know the creative workplace where people feel like they matter. And so if we get beneath that surface stuff and just talk about connective tissue and community, I think people get it. And the science and the outcomes are pretty clear. If you get the right culture, outcomes improve. Productivity goes up, engagement goes up, turnover goes down. People create better work. And I feel like I'm preaching here, but if I say to you and everybody else listening to this, do you perform better when you feel better?
Yes.
Everyone's like, of course. Are you at your best when you feel your best?
Yes.
Of course. Just like professional athletes and surfers and authors and musicians. Well, if you know that, why wouldn't you create a culture where we can get people in a better place? More days, more weeks, more months. If it's really about the outcomes, so those are the kind of conversations we have.
Yeah, and it's a lot to get your head around, isn't it? That well, there's not an ROI on good culture, but it leads to many better things, and then you get the ROI on that. So it's secondarily having a ripple effect there. And you mentioned a few times here about like being with your people, and you use this word connection. I know that you're big about connection in the workplace. So what does that look like? How do we develop this connection with these 5 different generations in one place?
Well, it's a challenge right now, right? Because um, everyone is trying to figure out, is it remote? Is it hybrid? Is it in the office? Which one is relevant? Which one is the best? If it's hybrid, how many days? Which days? If it's remote, how do we build connective tissue? And so it is certainly a challenge, right? And I think we started this way. I'm not anti-technology, but again, we could have Thanksgiving dinner over Zoom.
Sure.
Is it the same? No, but I can, you know what I mean? So again, let's just have honest conversations. And so whatever your culture looks like, whether it be remote, hybrid, or in person, you have to be very, very intentional about how you create those connective moments. Because at the end of the day, it's always about people. Now, I would say I have a strong bias towards being around humans. I do. And a lot of my clients right now who are in let's just say, I don't want to make it about high tech, but who innovation is a big deal. Like you got to scale, you got to build product solutions. A lot of the challenge they have, they're not anti-remote, but they find it's a really big challenge to try to innovate remotely. Because a lot of the serendipitous vibing, like a musician, like a lot, if you're ever in music, right? If you're in a room and other people are playing music, you can feel the tempo and the physiology of the people, and you kind of pick, and you can kind of riff off each other. And so a lot of people, it's really hard to do that on a Zoom call. And so that's a part of the challenge. So then they're trying to figure out, okay, for remote or hybrid, maybe there's certain times of the year that are key moments, then we have to bring people together because we know we need focused work. And so either way, I don't think it's one or the other. I just think it's being very thoughtful about who we are, what our ethos is, what outcomes we want to drive, and then co-create on what that looks like. And be very transparent. I don't want to bring people back to the office just to bring them back. And I've seen that. Where we bring them back, and I've literally seen this, Robert. They're all back. They're sitting in a cube, and they're not even in the meeting room. They're all in their offices or in cubes on Zoom, but they're in the same space.
And what's the point?
What's the point? Exactly. So there's got to be a lot more rich discussion about what we're trying to do and why, and it has to be very thoughtful and intentional.
Okay, I agree completely. So there's a lot of nuance here, and it's not just, well, here's the mechanism. It's why are we doing and what are we trying to accomplish? And I like your idea here of changing the channel of just, sometimes it's remote, sometimes it's in person, depending on do we want to innovate, do we want to grind, get stuff done? And you're saying that it comes down to a lot of thinking this through. And it seems like that like leadership is a lot of thinking things through, right? Like what decisions am I going to make? Am I playing it too safe? What are other people dealing with? What's the empathy there? And it's always great to discuss the mistakes, and especially the number one mistake. So is there like a number one top leadership mistake that you keep seeing that really needs fixing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the one, I mean, again, I try to stay really relevant to where we are because these are, again, I don't want to be, bombastic, unprecedented times. There's just a lot right now going on in the world.
Yeah.
So I think if you look at the data, and I try to follow the data, burnout and loneliness are at all-time highs. So is employee disengagement. Gallup just came out really with the state of the work. And I think plus or minus, it was like 30% of the global workforce is engaged. So 70% is disengaged. Does that mean they don't want to do good work? Again, that'd be pretty morbid. So I tend to follow the data. And I think that part of the disengagement is, to your point earlier, they don't feel connected. They don't feel part of a community. So work feels very transactional. It's just, you know what I mean? It just feels very binary. And so I think in terms of that, I would tell leaders right now to be more intentional about building those connections. Like, how about just checking in on people and having conversations like this? Like, how you doing? What's going on? It doesn't have to be an hour, but having moments where we just connect and just talk about stuff outside of work, like we would do in a real meeting room if you're remote, like get to know people. And again, I'm not asking you to be intrusive, but at the end of the day, if it's about relationships, you have to be very intentional about creating those relationships. And sometimes that means you have to lead and be a little vulnerable. Open up. You're frustrated. I don't get it. Guys, I don't know. I'm upside down. Is anybody else feeling this? Those are real conversations that I think a lot of people don't feel comfortable in, but those, I think you will start to create more connective tissue with people when you can be real.
That's an important life lesson, especially in this day and age, right? Where it's like whatever happened to hanging out at the mall, whatever happened to having a circle of friends. It seems like the way that technology's evolved and getting older, and some friends fall away and they don't come back, and then it seems like there's this need to check in, as you say, to be proactive, even though it is awkward. But who else will do it if not you? And so I love your idea here of checking in, see who you need to follow up with. And I found and this is really reassuring also, Devin, because I found myself having a few meetings like this a day now, of just like checking in my case with past podcast guests, and just like not having any intention or agenda, just kind of meeting, seeing how they're doing, discussing problems, discussing vulnerabilities, opening up. And it's awkward, but it needs to be done, doesn't it? And because if we just kind of do what's easier and do what is right in front of us, and put out those fires, and there's not enough left time for that human factor. And so speaking of the humanity of it all, right? There's always this talk of burnout or quiet quitting. So what's your take on this kind of this midness, this, people getting a job and never showing up to it, or doing the bare minimum? Like, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, those are all culture issues, right? So it's funny how we have names and we kind of proclaim them, and we kind of move, from one thing to another, and it becomes a meme. Because again, I didn't have the language when I started many, many years ago, but I've been in jobs where you feel like you're devalued when you don't have a voice, and you're kind of sort of looking around, what's next. So, I mean, and that I get. Um, I do think, again, some of when I say younger, in terms of younger generations, that I have access to more information than a lot of the older generation. I didn't grow up in the era of smartphones. And I say that in a good way, because I think some of the younger generations don't have to settle. Why would I settle? Why would I accept less than? I'll give you an example. Someone the other day told me, and I think I forgot what the space was, but they said something to me like, don't bite off more than you can chew. All right, that's what someone said to me. And I thought to myself, and I said, you know what? I'd rather choke on greatness than nibble on mediocrity.
Nice.
And I said that, right? And it was like, well, I see. So I say that in the terms, I think everyone wants to do good work. I come into the conversation assuming people want to do the best work. So if we know that, how do I create a space or a culture to allow people to do that? And so that's the goal of a leader. Now, keep in mind, if you're in a big organization, it's really hard to change that. But if you run a finance team or a sales team or an engineering team, don't try to boil the ocean, boil a pot of water. What could you do on that team to create a space where those 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 people feel like they're a really, really big deal? And so those are some of the things that I work on. And so I tend to come at this conversation also from a design thinking standpoint. If we don't change the design of the work, then the work just feels like the work. Too often I find that a lot of things we do at work are things we've always done. They're like a bad Christmas sweater that your grandma keeps putting under the Christmas tree every year, and it never fits. And we've been doing the same thing for 30 years. And I give people, what do your one-on-ones look like? Maybe it could be a walking meeting. Maybe it's shorter meetings. What if we walked in a room and said, hey guys, we have too many meetings. Do you think I did this the other day? We did something, Robert, called a meeting audit. I put everybody in the room. We had a whiteboard. Everyone had a marker. Guys, this is what our Outlook calendar looks like over the month. Do we need all these meetings? Can we free up? What do you think? What do you think the engagement was if I said, well, I'm going to give you the opportunity to make some choices to have less meetings? It was like
Less
SEAL
meeting
Team
sounds
6.
exciting. Yeah, right.
Yes. And then SEAL Team 6. I had everybody up on the board running around. We walked out of with 30% fewer meetings. Do you not think that brought some joy to free up capacity on their Outlook calendars to actually do work and be in less meetings? Yeah. That's just one data point of a lot of things the leaders can do.
I like it. So you're saying if you're overwhelmed by trying to boil the ocean, just work on a small scale and figure out what you can do just with your local team, and figure out what excites them or what can shake things up, and do these audits. And the question, well, all these things that we've been doing on repeat, do we really have to stay stuck in this infinite loop, or can we do something different that gets us excited? And so where it's all about human nature, isn't it? And you work with teachers and top execs and people of all kinds. Would you say, is there a universal truth about humans at work?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a few that come to mind. Universal truth. And this is real. I'm actually glad you asked that question because when you look at the aggregate, we spend more time at work than we do anywhere else.
Yeah.
Right. And so let me put it in context. If you look at the mortality tables, most of us, give or take, have about 80 summers. 80 summers. And so out of those 80 summers, half of those years are at work.
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm going to spend 40 plus years of my existence at work, just think about that. Do you not think that maybe kind of sort of I want to be in spaces with people who want to be there and want to drive and do good things?
You'd want
And
that.
so, yes, we all want that. And so those are conversations that I have and I try to put in context to say, if we got to be here, let's create an opportunity where we want to be here. And not necessarily there's things that we need to add. Maybe sometimes there's things we need to eliminate or remove. And if we could just do less of this, not this, work will feel better. Again, it's contextual. So I'm not asking leaders to go out and be, a management consultant. But if you got people in a room and you hear their voices, you'll be surprised at some things that they're aware of that you're not. So just acknowledging that you have some blind spots and having them being able to share and then actually implement an idea, it's really, really powerful. And you can really co-create a culture pretty quick and get some wins and get people dialed in and go, wow, he gets it. This feels good. And then the culture starts to shift.
Nice. Well, so change is possible and excitement at work is possible, and we can get to fulfillment. It doesn't have to be the situation where we go and we do something we hate, being around people that we don't like and they all hate what they do. We can have fun, right? The rising tide can lift all boats. So you definitely delivered today as far as giving us some of these new perspectives and telling us that, we can delete some of these things that aren't working in work, and we don't have to just do the superficial office parties. We can actually make work better. We can make it an enjoyable place, a place where we're excited and enthusiastic about going. And so if someone has been picking up on some of your enthusiasm and excitement, Mr. Devin C. Hughes, what are some next steps here? What sort of role do you provide as a coach or a speaker? And how does somebody know if they're the right company or person to be contacting you?
Yeah, so I think any organization, I work with government, nonprofit, profit, all startup, all the way, assortment of. If you've got people and outcomes, and you want to create a better workplace, healthy culture, then I'm worthy of a conversation. Whether it be a keynote, an event, offsite, workshop, retreat, leadership coaching, training, I'd be happy to talk to you. You can certainly find me online, my website. Again, I write, research. I will say this, I have a strong bias towards tools and resources. So I think what kind of sort of maybe which differentiates me a little bit is I give people things to actually operationalize. In other words, Robert, I don't just tell you that you need to be healthier. It doesn't help you. You already know that. It's intuitive. But I actually help you figure out the right workout regimen, how often, the days, the cadence, the hour. I get very into the details to help you drive the behavior change that you want and tie it to outcomes. That's why people tend to gravitate to my work.
Nice. So a plan, not just keywords, not just platitudes, but here's how you'll actually get it done. And so that website that you mentioned is devinchughes.com. That's DEVINCHUGHES.com. It's devinchughes.com. And that way, I mean, you probably already put a face to the voice, right? If you're watching it on YouTube, but maybe you're just listening on podcast. So to see what this guy is all about, as far as the speaking, training, coaching, that's devinchughes.com. He's a speaker, he's an author, he's a thought leader, and his phone number, if you're a phone person, is 888-964-1113, 888-964-1113. We've been speaking with best-selling author, leadership coach, workplace culture muse, and global employee engagement thought leader. So if you're the kind of person that wants this healthy culture, as Devin said, it's worth that conversation. And before I let you go, Mr. Devin, it's time for the scary part of the show where I try to put you on the spot and I ask you for a quote or lesson that has served you. So what do you have as far as a helpful quote or lesson to pass on to us?
Yeah, so I don't know about quote, but I think my lesson, at least personally, I think one of the greatest challenges in life is finding out who you truly are. The second greatest challenge is being happy with what you find.
Ooh, I like it. And that's
Yeah.
a tough recipe, a tough thing to deliver there, right? Who you are, and are you happy with what you find? And if you're stuck, that's some thinking's required. But also, if you're stuck in this as far as your career path, as far as your workplace culture, and you want to start this conversation with Mr. Devin Hughes about having a healthier culture at work, then you can find him on LinkedIn. It's Devin C. Hughes. But more importantly, where we want you to go is devinchughes.com. As he said, he works in business, works in government. You can book him as a speaker. You can just have this conversation and see what can be done to lead to real shifts in culture, behaviors, and performance. He makes your events a huge success with eye-opening and thought-provoking keynote talks. That website is devinchughes.com. Mr. Devin, thanks for showing up, blowing our minds, making us laugh a little bit, and helping us out with this very important subject of a better workplace. I appreciate you stopping by and delivering.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. That was a blast.